Much of my early childhood memories are of me sitting in front of the TV watching a plethora of sci-fi, space opera movies and TV shows. From Star Trek and Star Wars, Thunderbirds and Doctor Who, and the original series of Battlestar Galactica. I have many fond memories of the shiny robots and pew-pew laser guns, so when I settled down with a box set of season 1 of the reboot as a teenager, I was caught completely off guard. And so was most of the surrounding pop culture and critics who saw the original miniseries and then continued following the show for its further 4-season run. Rebooted and produced by Ronald D. Moore and David Icke, who instead looked to shows like The West Wing or 24 as inspiration for their space opera rather than other landmarks of the sci-fi genre. No aliens, no laser guns, no shiny robots, no cape-wearing villains. Other than an FTL drive, artificial gravity and fully sentient machines, everything in the rebooted Battlestar Galactica series is brought down into a gritty realism, and it was truly groundbreaking at the time. This is especially true of the distinctive and amazing score by composer Bear McCreary. Rather than the John Williams-esque heroic marchers and brass-powered orchestras, McCreary's score is diverse and unique, being driven instead with an emphasis on strings and Japanese taiko drums, mixing in Hindi lyrics for the main theme, as well as Gaelic songs, Irish and Scottish folk instruments, and giving spotlights to individual players such as Wonder Woman theme tune electric cellist Tina Guo, or McCreary's own brother to sing the absolutely rockin' cover of All Along the Watchtower. A fusion of folk, rock, and traditional music from all across the world. A score so unique in the realms of space opera sci-fi that it's had countless imitators since. Battlestar Galactica's effect on sci-fi television has been felt in numerous franchises across the landscape, for better or for worse. Many Stargate fans, for example, lament the cancellation of the fun, adventurous Stargate Atlantis in favour of the far more downbeat Stargate universe. On the other hand, it's allowed brilliant shows like The Expanse to feel more comfortable and yet just as compelling. The shift in tone and creative direction is so drastic when compared to the original 1978 show, they're barely related outside of some recognizable iconography and extremely loose adaptations of several story arcs. For better or for worse, it was definitely bold. The miniseries to kick things off is a loose recreation of the original pilot movie to set up the overall premise. With the help of an unwitting Gaius Baltar, the Cylons, in this version sentient robots originally created by humans, wipe out the defenses of the 12 colonies of Kobol and go about systematically bombing humanity into extinction. With only 50,000 people left, the Battlestar Galactica joins a ragtag fleet to go off in search of the lost 13th colony of mankind, Earth. While the presentation is pretty standard stuff by now, the great character work and tight direction still captures the viewer's attention and draws out the tension in a compelling way. Edward James Olmos as William Adama carries gravitas and a quiet badassery while also having the character flaw of limited emotional expression to generate clashes between others. Starbuck and Apollo are a mixed bag for me personally. Their arcs are clear cut. Take a bratty pilot with daddy problems and a maverick show-off and put them through the crucible of war to forge them into better people. But I can see how viewers could become irritated by their early antics. Colonel Ty is right to be scolded for his bad habits and sloppiness, and yet Michael Hogan's performance is endlessly enjoyable. Mary McDonnell's President Laura Roslin is also fantastic, having the fate of humanity thrust upon her shoulders. The calm, collected authority presented while surely suffering from crippling anxiety is wonderfully illustrated in McDonnell's nuanced and subtle performance. Like most of the cast, Boomer, Tyrrell, and Agathon all start out in broad, likeable enough terms, but slowly become more interesting as the internal and external struggles amp up as the show goes on. But without a doubt, the unique pairing that brings the show together is Gaius Baltar and the mysterious Six. Changing the moustache-twirling villain of the original into an egocentric, selfish, cunning, scheming, cowardly, manipulative genius creates easily the best character of the entire series. James Callis' performance is sublime, finding the perfect balance between completely unlikable while also being funny and somehow empathetic. Baltar is a survivor, willing to do anything to stay alive in such desperate circumstances, making him a wonderfully fiendish villain sometimes, but also at other times an uncomfortably relatable protagonist. Trisha Helfer as Six also does a fantastic job here, especially considering she had no prior acting experience at this point. Helfer's training as a model lends her an angelic screen presence, making her character alluring to the viewer, but also mysterious and untrustworthy. Not to mention all the other versions of the same Model 6 which Helfer had to play. It's this bizarre dynamic between Helfer and Callis as lovers and villains and selfish scheming weasels, which constantly steal scenes from under the noses of other characters. The Cylons in general being given a human face creates an ensemble of charismatic and interesting villains. From Xena Warrior Princess Lucy Lawless to Quantum Quantum Leap's Dean Stockwell. It's this alteration to the Cylon race, possibly out of budgetary reasons, which brings the focus of the show squarely on the characters and their interactions. We're learning about the villains as people while also exploring the paranoia and personal rivalries of the heroes. The predominant storylines of seasons 1 through 3 is where it's most solid, especially season 2. Skirmishes with Cylons in space and in close quarters, finding strange, supernaturally guided clues to Earth's location, reuniting with the Battlestar Pegasus, colonizing and then fleeing from New Caprica, all of it offering a wide range of gorgeously depicted space battles, rich development for our main characters, and a thread of moral greyness to make us empathize with some of our villains as well. All of these facets painting a picture of a desperate, violent, grim reality of conflicting characters, ideologies, and philosophies, with enough intriguing mystery boxes throughout to keep us hooked for the next season. However, it's this mystery box element which ultimately cripples the solid plotting and direction of the show. Rather than a Babylon 5 style television novel with all major story arcs mapped out from the beginning, it became increasingly apparent following the New Caprica story arc that we were more likely in making it up as we go along lost territory, which is really quite unfortunate. Miraculous events and hints of some higher intelligence controlling the events of the story had the opportunity to cement the show as a seminal work of science fiction, if only it could pay off these big questions being asked by the viewers. Despite some creative twists in terms of who's the Cylon, when is this actually taking place, etc., Battlestar Galactica collapses under its own weight in its final season. Instead of concrete answers or at least the hint of some creative concepts, we were left with a vague hint of some higher power and unresolved mumbo-jumbo prophecies. We even needed an entire standalone DVD movie to explain what the Cylon plan was, which was being hinted at in every single episode. Considering all of the ideologically driven conflicts throughout the show, botching the conclusion in this way is a big letdown. All that being said, where the finale doesn't let us down is in the character drama. Sure, thinking about it after the fact, you'll be left with a ton of questions. In the moment, however, the epic spectacular joint Cylon-human rescue operation is kick-ass, and seeing the arcs wrapped up for each character is truly satisfying, even if the mystery box plotting is kind of thrown out the window at this point. Baltar's journey from a conniving weasel to this spiritualist leader of those in need is fitting. Liadama's goodbye to Starbuck is poetic, Agathon and Athena's happily ever after is touching, but the one which personally gets me every single time is the death of President Roslin and her burial by Commander Adama. It is absolutely heartbreaking, and it brings me to tears without fail every single time I watch it. On reflection, it's a strange mess of a last episode, but in the moment, it really soars. Battlestar Galactica as a whole started out great, but eventually fell into a mess. But as a whole, it's a show with layered development for an ensemble of rich characters, a strikingly original feeling universe with memorable visuals and mythology. Yes, you'll be confused and a little disappointed afterwards, but for an emotional journey and thrilling adventure, the Battlestar Galactica reboot is definitely worth adding to the zeitgeist of science fiction fandom. But for all its dark and gritty moral relativism, what about the original Battlestar Galactica? Well, you'll have to find out in another video because I'm going to be annoying and leave it there. Thanks so much for watching though. If you like these videos and want to see more of them earlier, join me over on my Patreon where you'll be able to receive a ton of exclusive benefits. Until then, have a good one guys, live long and prosper.